Today's show is brought to you by our new presenting sponsor, Hard Rock Bet. There are 3 things to be thankful for this week: family, food, and you guessed it, football. Thanks to Hard Rock Bet, you can easily sneak in some bets while your crazy uncle goes on his annual rant. Sign up today and you could feast with $150 in bonus bets. Just place a $5 bet. If it hits, you not only get your winnings, but also $150 extra in bonus bets. That's an offer you can't pass up, even on a full stomach. Plus, this week on Hard Rock Bet, you get 3 50% profit boosts, one for each Thanksgiving Day game. Boost your same game parlay or same game parlay max, so your bet pays extra winnings. Hard Rock Bet offers new promos every single day. Download the Hard Rock Bet app now and make your first deposit. What is going on, everybody? Happy Thanksgiving week. Turkey Day is right around the corner, meaning a lot of football. We got a big Monday night game tomorrow night. We had a lot happen. The Rams just blow out, destroy, ruin Tampa, who is in complete shambles right now. Obviously, Baker Mayfield injured, couldn't finish the game. Teddy Bridgewater, who was coaching high school football, leading his team to championships until impermissible benefits and hamburgers and Uber rides. Some opposing team surely turned him in, got him fired, / he resigned. But Teddy Bridgewater's backup quarterback, so probably pays a little more than a high school football coach. So we'll dive into that game. A lot happened today. Eagles, the Lions, the Packers and J.J. McCarthy, Chicago Bears. I mean, all the Chicago Bears do is win. Steelers in shambles. We actually just had some breaking news with Chip Kelly. Obviously, the Raider game wasn't that interesting, right? But Shedeur was making his start, so we had to pay attention. Myles Garrett had 75 sacks. And then after Chip Kelly was just fired, some thoughts on the Monday Night Football game, which has a lot on the line with the 49ers and Carolina, especially with Tampa losing. So we will dive into it all. What started to be kind of like, not much going on, got good, and obviously the Eagles-Cowboy game really kind of took the afternoon to another level. But we will start with the Rams. I do think, after the Eagles fell apart and lost just an awful game. I mean, you're up 21-0, killing the Cowboys. There's not any part of any human being alive, including Jerry Jones, Dak Prescott, Brian Schottenheimer, when they were up 21-0, you think the Eagles were going to lose. And then they did. And then the Rams come out like that. You got to say the 2 best teams right now in the NFC still are the Los Angeles Rams and Seattle. But the Rams' ceiling right now, the Devontae Adams move. I mean, you could argue 2 of the best offseason moves were Devontae Adams and George Pickens. I mean, both guys are completely dominant. Now, the difference is, George was a very polarizing player. Devontae was, at least in my opinion, a first ballot Hall of Fame level guy. And I think this little run with Stafford is going to really help solidify that, because the way he looks with Matt looks like he did in the prime of Aaron Rodgers' career. He is just a dominant force. I think he has 10 touchdowns on the year. He's uncoverable. You put him with Puka, especially in the red zone. Their offense looks incredible. Their defense looks awesome. Their coaching is elite. This is a team, to me, that just looks poised to compete / win a Super Bowl. And now that they, gain control of the conference, they can get home field advantage. And anytime you give Sean McVay, I mean, this is a team, you give them a bye, especially Matt Stafford, they are going to be extremely dangerous. Offensively, they have a potent passing game. You put them indoors. Hell, I mean, we saw them last year in the playoff game in the snow go toe to toe with the Eagles, who clearly then were better than they are now. But you put this guy indoors, with the weapons he has, how good their defense is playing. I mean, I did not know this landman character from Colorado was essentially Ray Lewis reincarnated. They just extended him within the last 48 hours. He's hitting people today like he's Roquan Smith or Fred Warner. I mean, he's an elite player. Then Forbes, the guy they traded for from you can't argue with the physical characteristics. And they've immediately flipped that guy overnight into a high-end contributing player. Like you speak about coaching, you speak about culture. If I'm a Commander fan, it's like, Dan Quinn, you're a defensive guy. We just had this guy. Our secondary sucks. You couldn't make this work. Like, what's going on? He comes with Shula and McVay. Within a couple weeks, he's making huge plays tonight on Chris Godwin. Like, God, this guy's moving. He's mirroring the guy across the field, making plays on the ball. Like, damn. Now, listen, Tampa is really banged up. Obviously, Baker's in shambles. But, like, their back was kind of against the wall. And to get curb stomped like they did tonight was, to me, much more of a reflection on the Rams than it is on them. I mean, their season's kind of spiraling in the wrong direction. But the Rams are humming. You get the momentum last week from that Seattle game, and they look like a team. Like right now, to me, if I had to say, hey, who's going to win a Super Bowl? I would take them over Seattle just because I trust Matt Stafford a lot more than I trust Sam Darnold. Now, every time now I get they're playing the Titans. Like Sam Darnold is playing really, really well, but he is going to be under a magnifying glass as we come down the home stretch and obviously in the playoff game. But there is no disputing something pretty special is going on with Matt Stafford. He's clearly going to be the betting favorite over the next 24 hours in the race to win the MVP. He's playing as well as he ever has in his career. The back injury, which was a real thing, he could not practice in training camp, feels like something that happened 7 years ago. And I had someone actually send me a direct message, and it kind of got me thinking. And the gist of it was this guy was having a conversation about quarterback legacies. And I brought up how Matt Stafford is already a Hall of Famer, which I agree. But if he wins the MVP and also wins the Super Bowl MVP, that would put him in rarefied air. Because, listen, some people have come, kind of prisoner of the moment comparing his career to Rodgers' career. It's not even fair. Aaron got to go to Green Bay, a place that is called like quarterback heaven. It's an incredible place to go. And listen, I have always defended Rodgers' career. In the prime of his career in Green Bay, it didn't get any better. Matt Stafford played for the Lions, right? You're going to do a lot better in life when you go to a place that knows what they're doing when you're young than a place that had no clue. And when he went to the Lions, it was a joke. But what we have seen of him with Sean McVay over these last 4 or 5 years, like he's already checked off. If he had good coaching, no one can argue he would have been considered one of the greatest players of all time. It's like, well, look at his record with the Lions. Everyone's record before Dan Campbell got there, my entire life was awful. Their two best players at 30 years old quit. Barry Sanders and Calvin Johnson. Literally, they said, I'm done playing football at 30 years old. It's like unprecedented. It never happens. He comes to the Rams. He's now taken them to the playoffs basically every year. Obviously, he won the Super Bowl, and now he's going to win an MVP. So, like, he will never have the longevity of some of these guys that are quote-unquote his peers. Obviously, Rodgers, Breeze, Roethlisberger, those type players, because when they got, and you see it now with, Mahomes or Lamar, those guys got to the league and they immediately started winning. But, like, if I put Patrick Mahomes or Lamar Jackson on the 2008 Detroit Lions, I'm pretty confident it wouldn't have gone that well. Why? Because it hadn't gone well for literally everyone that went to that franchise. And now I'm watching him with the Rams. I do think it's, whether they win the Super Bowl this year or not, if he wins the MVP, like, it's really going to be a validation for his career. And I also think he'd have to start asking himself, because the quarterback draft this year is atrocious. It is not good. Beside Fernando Mendoza, who's probably going to go number 1 overall, There is not another player that most people in the NFL feel comfortable that you would take in the top 20 picks. Well, his franchise, the Rams, they have the Falcons' first round pick. So they're going to get a pick within probably the top 15. And then they're also going to have their pick. Well, they have a young, like Devontae Adams is under contract for multiple years. Puka's going nowhere. Kyron Williams is under contract. Landman's under contract. All their defensive linemen are young and under contract. So this nucleus of the team isn't going anywhere. So if you're Stafford, even if you won an MVP and the Super Bowl, it doesn't get much better. I know he's made a lot of money. He literally has. I think he's one of, if not the highest paid quarterbacks, or because most quarterbacks are the highest paid players of all time. I think he's either 3 or 2. Maybe Brady was 1. Maybe Rodgers was 1. I forget. I haven't looked at the list recently. But he's definitely in the top 5 of all-time career earnings for an NFL player. And he's making $40 million this year. But why not run it back and make $45 million again next year? If this is how good your team is, this is how good you're playing, especially physically, he looks to be in great condition. The league has never been more conducive about extending your career as a quarterback because they can't touch you. They literally can't hit you. So if you're Matt Stafford and you feel good, you clearly like living in Los Angeles. Your head coach is also your offensive coordinator. You have this great rapport now with these 2 wide receivers. Your team's going to be in position to potentially draft some sweet offensive linemen high. I don't think he's going anywhere. He could only just start kind of gaining this legacy, which is kind of cool. Every once in a while, you get a guy that kind of becomes this legendary player in his mid to late 30s. And some guys have a stronger case than others, right? When I was in high school, it was Rich Gannon, who was kind of this afterthought. Then Gruden convinces Al Davis to bring him to the Raiders, and he resurrects his career for a 4 or 5 year run, wins an MVP, takes his team to a Super Bowl. Now, what Stafford's doing is more impressive, and Stafford is a better player. But my point is that sometimes you get in these situations that you get some like late life. Now, Stafford led a good life in Detroit in terms of he was always making one of, if not the highest paid players in the league, made a ton of money, clearly was a good player, but was just in a dysfunctional place. Then he goes to a place that just knows what they're doing. And you watch him. And now he's excelling. And their franchise is thriving. What they did a couple years ago when they pivoted, and Sean clearly had to, listen, he didn't handle losing well. All he had done is win. And he flirted with Amazon. Don't blame them. They were going to pay him $15+ million to call Thursday Night Football with Al Michaels. You work 1 day a week. You fly everywhere in a private jet with Al. It's a pretty good life. Like, it's what I personally would have chose. But, I'm a media talking guy. Sean McVay's a football coach. And he realized, like, yeah, my life's pretty good. And just because I'm a dad, looked around, a lot of football coaches have kids. And he's meant to coach football. And him making the move with his college roommate, Shula, to be his defensive coordinator, that has been an incredible hire. And clearly, I don't know if insecure is the right word, but he was just hesitant to do it, just the way it would be looked upon. Probably not even from the outside, more internally, guys on the staff. And he'd had a bunch of good defensive coordinators. I mean, the moment he got there, Wade Phillips, Brandon Staley ran one of the great scams of all time in 2020. Obviously, Raheem was a stud for him. But Shula has been every bit as good as all those guys. And if you think about some of the teams they're probably going to have to beat, to win the NFC, Seattle, they're clearly pretty comfortable playing Sam Darnold. If they matched up with the 49ers early, they're pretty comfortable playing, that operation as a franchise. The Eagles, they've played them really, really well, despite losing the last 2 times when they played them this year and last year in the playoffs. The Lions are extremely flawed. I feel really, really good. Obviously, health can change anything at a moment's notice. But if you're a Rams fan right now, I mean, tonight that game was over after the first quarter. That was a glorified training camp joint practice, for the Rams. And they're riding high. They look fantastic. And Matt Stafford feels like he's kind of solidifying his legacy on a completely different level, which is cool because I think he always had a lot of supporters in the NFL. A lot of people that, thought that he was better than he ever got credit for. And it's hard. You don't get that much credit when you lose a lot. You just don't. Fair or not. You can be a good coach on a losing team because you're in a dysfunctional organization, right? You can be a good player on a losing team because you have a bad GM, a bad coach. And when you see Matt Stafford with the Rams, it has been impressive to watch. On the flip side, I'm a big Jason Light guy. I think he's one of the best GMs in the league. And their team fully healthy is really good. But they are not only not fully healthy, they are trending in the wrong direction. And I get asked a lot of questions about Todd Bowles, and even Collinsworth mentioned it tonight. Like those two coaches tonight couldn't be on the opposite ends of the spectrum, right? McVay looks like a Hollywood actor. Todd looks like this old, grumpy, kind of quiet guy. I like Todd. He was always cool to me when I worked with him in Philly. I think he's an excellent defensive mind, but clearly the team is really off kilter. If Baker is seriously injured, they are just completely fucked. There really is no way around it. They would have no chance to compete. I mean, Teddy is an awesome guy, but I mean, he was coaching high school 2 months ago. He was not planning on being in the situation. So you throw him out there out of desperation. The injuries on this team have continued to mount. Obviously, the Todd is a defensive guy right now, and their defense looks atrocious. So even if you go, listen, you got some injuries, we don't expect you to be the 85 Bears. Can we just at least neutralize opponents a little bit? And the answer right now is no. I mean, it felt like they could have thrown to Devontae every single play, and there's nothing they could do. So I think Tampa right now, a couple weeks ago, it felt like they would have been a shoe in to win this division. The Panthers are coming, and they still play the Panthers twice. Baker's health. If you told me Baker has a serious injury, he's going to miss a lot of time, I would say the Panthers could not only win this division, you could convince me Tampa's not going to win many games moving forward. They can't stop a soul on defense. Their offense without Mayfield is going to be in shambles. And it just feels like the momentum that they had early in the season, winning all those close games. I think you feel like you watch the Rams, you watch Seattle, you watch some of these teams. Denver's some of these teams have a lot of momentum this year. It feels like the Bucs had it, and now they're rolling back down the hill, going in the wrong direction. So I don't really know what else to say beside it's not looking pretty at all, for Tampa Bay. Uh, Before we dive into some other stuff, there was just some breaking news about Chip Kelly getting fired, and we can talk a little too about Shedeur and Myles Garrett. I never understood the hire for the Raiders when it came to Chip Kelly. This was a guy over the course of his last couple years at UCLA, even their good teams, they were dominated by the defensive side of the ball. The offense was not good. Dante Moore, who's become a collegiate star and was one of I don't know if he was second or third overall recruit. He was supposed to go to Oregon, flip last second, went to Chip. They started him as a freshman, and he looked atrocious. And you watch him with Oregon, Dan Lanning and Will Stein. He looks fantastic. This notion that Chip Kelly is some dominant offensive mind in 2025 is laughable. Listen. I don't know if it's Pete Carroll, if it was Tom Brady, but to give Chip Kelly 3 years, $18 million in 2025 is one of the more crazy financial investments in recent memory. It really is insane. Obviously, the Pete Carroll situation is not going well. It's safe to say. I think we overuse this term. We just use it for anything right now. Like, is your dog just washed? No, my dog's old. It can't walk that fast. But anything that we see that's slowing down, we just go, that's washed. Pete Carroll might legitimately be over the hill. It might be over. Same thing for Belichick. Like sometimes you get in your mid 70s, no matter how much you love football, no matter how much you think about football, no matter like how much you just a football lifer, you just lose your fastball. I mean, we saw that video of Nick Saban on the lazy boy watching Bills Chiefs when Miss Terry screams at him to sit up. Like he kind of looked like a grandpa, similar age as those guys. He just didn't have his fastball anymore. Doesn't mean he doesn't love football. Doesn't mean he doesn't think about football all the time. But it was just over, and I respect him for just saying I'm out. Pete Carroll just couldn't live without it. He's richer than he ever could have imagined in his wildest dreams. If you would ask him at 30 or 40 years old, but there's just some like I don't know if he's got to scratch his itch with the ego. But watching him today, I mean, people talk a lot of shit about Stefanski, myself included, a little bit. They were just running circles around the Raiders. But like part of Chip Kelly, once you get like an innovative offensive guy, you should watch something. Go, God, I see some stuff. Like I'm watching Stefanski today. He called some just deeper breaking routes for Shedeur. Why? He's got a bigger arm than Dylan Gabriel. And then they got in the goal line and they like ran some wildcat, just direct snap to Junkins. You can't stop this guy because he's one of the Myles Garrett's the best player on the field. Max Crosby's about the second best player on the field, but this guy's might be the third best player on the field. We're gonna direct snap it to him. You watch Chip Kelly, he's just running a normal offense. It's like I thought this guy was like this innovative guy. No, what he is he's running an all-time scam. And he got $18 million, more power to him. But that is going to go down as one of the most insane hires in recent memory, especially when you factor in he got that much money. Because who are you bidding against? What was he making at Ohio State? $2.5 million? You had to almost 3x his money. The guy went from this kind of legendary person to just turned into this mercenary chasing cash, and he was good at it. But left UCLA a couple years ago high and dry. Went to Ohio State. Was a huge reason that they lost to Michigan for the fourth straight year as a 20-point favorite last year, running one of the worst game plans you've ever seen. Obviously got hot in the playoffs and parlayed that into getting fired before Thanksgiving. And listen, Pete Carroll's fired a lot of coaches. And typically when you fire a coordinator in a situation that's getting really ugly, you're next. So I think at this point in time, if I was a betting man, I would say Pete Carroll's going to be one and done. And, speaking of that game, obviously Shedeur just gave the Browns a little life. I mean, Dylan Gabriel's is not good. I'm not going to act like Shedeur is the second coming here of Patrick Mahomes. Let's see him play a real team because right now the Raiders are not a real team. That's like a minor league operation. Pretty embarrassing, honestly. And that's back to Pete Carroll. Like, I don't know what's going on, but you only play who's on the schedule. Shedeur had a couple just explosive plays down the field. Kind of refreshing if you're a Browns fan. And I think he showed enough. Like, he's starting the rest of the year. And if I'm Jimmy Haslam and they show the picture of, like, the GM with his laptop and Jimmy behind him on his phone, like, scrolling Twitter or looking at babes on Instagram or something, I think Jimmy's just play him. I appreciate the Browns, too, bringing Deshaun Watson to mentor Shedeur, quite the combination. But to me, the story for the Browns is I've been watching football a long time. Myles Garrett, and I wasn't old enough to remember Lawrence Taylor beside the highlights on YouTube and obviously the way people talk about him. And you just watch the highlights. I mean, he'd show up benders on crack and then get 3 sacks against Joe Montana. Belichick and Parcells, will go to their grave calling him the greatest defensive player of all time. The greatest defensive players I've seen will probably be like Reggie White, Ray Lewis, Ed Reed. There's a short list of guys. Myles Garrett is every bit as good as any of those guys. And today, he was just a man amongst boys. And I get the Raiders' offensive line is in shambles, but they might as well have had me out there. They might as well have had a cone out there because it did not matter. He had 3 sacks. He has 18 now on the season. I think my producer Shane was telling me he's got like 13 in this month. He is just an absolute wrecking ball of domination coming off the edge. I mean, he looks like a Greek god. His ability to bend and explosion and tenacity. I stand by what I said. I do believe that they should have traded him just because their team is so bad. I mean, they're going to win 4 games with a guy that's going to end up with like 25, 28 sacks. But I also can understand if you're the owner, are we ever going to have a player this good again? Like if you just go, who are the best players in the history of the Browns? You'd be like Jim Brown, Myles Garrett. Like that's kind of Joe Thomas. Like it's a pretty short list of like all-time great players. And like I do get it. Like we just need someone that some of our fans can be proud of. And, when Shedeur hit the big bomb early in the game, you saw his excitement. So if you're going to motivate him just with a little more juice, the Browns just today became a little more interesting while the Raiders all-time circle the drain moment. I mean, God, that was embarrassing. The stat Stuckey had given me is the Browns since 2000 have started 17 guys, have made their debut for the Cleveland Browns, and they were 0-17. Well, Shedeur ended that today. Speaking of streaks that ended, I can't imagine how often you're up 21-0 in the first half and you lose a game, right? Nick Sirianni was 55-22 coming into this game. And I would imagine anytime he's at a 20-plus point lead uh, in a game, he's won the majority of them. There's not at one point in time in that first half that I think the Cowboys could win. And then it just started getting weird. Me and Colin were going to go early. And it's like, God, now it's 21-14. And I just, I can't even describe what I witnessed. An all time meltdown of just doing nothing. What I don't get is they come out, the Eagles, and they're just slicing and dicing the Cowboys. And A.J. Brown looks fantastic. He's into it. Devontae's making plays. Jalen's got a rhythm. And then the second half starts, and it's just like punt, 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 miss field goal, punt. I was like, how? I don't get it. And I saw Saquon have some comments after the game trying to put it on himself, saying that he's been a non-factor all season. I do think there's some truth to that. I don't know if he's, had a huge year, maybe feeling himself a little bit in the offseason. But like their offensive line clearly is nowhere near what it was last year. But a huge reason that they were such a dominant team last year is he had like 7 or 8 runs of over 50 yards. Obviously, he had whatever he had, 2,000 rushing yards on the season. He had one of the truly great, just years for a running back that you will ever see. But there is no explosive big play capability from their running game. And clearly, when they just have to depend on the pass throughout the entire game, they can't maintain it. And I've had people DMing me and texting me. I know a lot of Eagle fans in my life. Like, how can this guy, who is right now, I don't know how many touchdowns he's thrown on the season, but he only has thrown one interception. Like, Jalen does not turn it over. You can go through these stretches where it just looks like he is, like, there is no, nothing happens. It's like, what did I just witness out of those 3 plays? And the knock on him has been that when you play zone, he will just dink and dunk. He will not press the envelope down the field. And I do think that's indicative of the number of he hasn't thrown any picks because he's not willing to take chances. And you watch as this game. Now, granted, their back's against the wall. They need to push the ball. But like Dak consistently, in moments. Now, granted, sometimes where Dak does his scariest work is when he's down like 21, 24, 28, nothing. That's where Dak can put up some hollow stats. But today he played legitimate high level football. And George Pickens has thoroughly outplayed CeeDee Lamb. I will take a huge L. Jalen has 17 touchdowns. But when you watch him play, especially when they go through these ruts, he does not feel like a guy with a 17-1 touchdown to interception ratio because he's just not willing to take chances. And clearly, looking back on that game, it's like, well, they had a game plan, and he felt comfortable with the first 10, 15 plays. But as the game goes on, it just kind of gets bogged down in the mud, and it just goes nowhere. And then their running game doesn't exist because their interior offensive line's in shambles. Obviously, Lane Johnson's injured. Saquon, I don't know if he's lost a step. He just doesn't have the same burst. And all of a sudden, George Pickens looks like, I don't know, Terrell Owens meets Randy Moss. And he's been elite. He's outplayed CeeDee Lamb. He simply has. And he had some comments last week. Clearly matured. Now, you could argue some guys, you got to be careful about people in contract years. But he is a dominant player. And let's face it, like CeeDee Lamb has had stretches this year where it's like kind of underwhelming. Had a lot of big drops. I mean, one of the reasons that they lost, they easily could be 6-4-1 if it wasn't for CeeDee Lamb's big drops week 1 against Philadelphia. He had more today. But George Pickens like, don't worry, I got you. And he does. And he did today. He had a massive game. I mean, the last 2 weeks, he has 20 catches, 300 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He has been as good of a player as anyone in the NFL. And Jerry deserves a lot of credit because everyone was shitting on him. You can't trade Micah Parsons. Well, he did, and they've been fine. And honestly, adding Quinnen Williams, their defense looks dramatically better because you put him next to Clark, they just feel much more of like a solidified unit. And then offensively, the other thing is Javonte Williams was a guy who's like, oh, this guy's shot. Don't mess with him. He runs his ass off. So you put him with Ferguson, even though CD is kind of hit or miss this year, the threat of him takes so much pressure off George. I mean, George is every bit as good as a number 2 wide receiver as there has been in the NFL in 2025. And now there's going to be a lot of pressure on the Cowboys that even Dak said, like, I can't imagine like him going anywhere. I want him here. So you would imagine Jerry's going to pay him. And there's going to be a lot of pressure on their draft picks this offseason. But that was a fantastic win. Brian Schottenheimer deserves a lot of credit. Another guy that everyone shit on. Everyone just pulled their pants down and took a dump on the hire. I'm probably guilty as well. There is no disputing that he's excellent with Dak. And the offense throughout the majority of the season has been awesome. I also thought, I was like, you're going to put a wild card human like George Pickens on Brian Schottenheimer? Feels a little unfair. And he's thrived. So he deserves credit for that as well. Like, he can handle personalities. He's getting the best out of his players. So if I'm Jerry, I'm taking a pretty big victory lap all week long, leading right into Thanksgiving when I host the Chiefs. Okay, before we dive into a couple more games, I got to tell you about my friends, my partners, and the official ticketing app of this podcast, GameTime. If you want to go to one of these games, if you want to go to a professional football game, we got you covered because GameTime, they have tickets as low as $100. They have flash deals. They have the easiest interface I've ever used when it comes to a ticketing app. Also, when you look at the price on the app, that is the price you will pay at checkout. There are no hidden fees. The price you see when you click on it is the price you pay at checkout. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use the code JOHN for $20 off. Terms apply again. Create an account and redeem the code JOHN for $20 off. Download the GameTime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Somehow in this podcast internet business that we're all in, I've inherited a lot of Giants fans in my life. And the one thing I will say, and I've always said this, us on the West Coast, having been in radio and just a lot of my friends are big Niner people, when they suck, no one pays attention. People stop watching them. Yet having lived in Philly, knowing all these Giants people, New England, in the Northeast, it's kind of like the SEC. Even when you suck, they're still going to consume it. They kind of need it. And they try to find positive little elements to the team and to the operation, little things they can hold on to for the future, which I appreciate. Like, I love this. I do this for a living. I can talk football, any team with anybody. And I do wonder, and I mentioned this to Cowher today, that if the Giants would have made Jameis Winston the backup from the jump, and honestly even made him the starting quarterback from the jump, and then when they went to Jackson Dart, just turned Jameis into the backup, would Brian Daboll still have a job? Because clearly Jameis is a lot better than Russell Wilson. Now, he's clearly a wild card, and the Lions' defense is in shambles. Like, they have issues. They can't stop anybody. It looks like the same exact thing from last year. Explosive plays, guys wide open. And this is not Mario Manningham, Odell Beckham, and Malik Neighbors running around out there. It's Wan'Dale Robinson and a bunch of randos. Cam Scadaboo's getting into it with people on Twitter because he has a cast on his leg, bitching and moaning about him going to Monday Night Raw. So the players Jameis is throwing to will probably not be on the team in a couple years. You look up, he's thrown for over 350 yards. He catches a touchdown, breaks tackles. I respect Dan Campbell a lot. And him making the Lions respectable is as impressive as anything you'll ever see. Like, it should not happen, and it happened. It's like when Jim Harbaugh showed up at Stanford and they were 1-11. A couple years later, they're in a BCS game. It's like, how did you do this? It's like will, determination, heart. But once you get to the highest level, you kind of need some players. Like, that's the thing with the Eagles. It's going to be impossible to quit the Eagles going into the playoffs because you're like, they could beat anybody. They have the players, right? They have the elite blue chip guys at different positions. You look around the Lions, you're like, are they good enough? Like, are they? They got Aiden Hutchinson, but, Arnold's hurt. Who are these? Like, I don't think they are. And what we also know about the Lions, they got to go on the road. If you tell me they're the wild card and they're going to Philly, They're going to Green Bay. Guess what we're all going to do? And I love Jared Goff. I've watched his entire career, going back from when he was a freshman on a one-win team at Cal. I'm a huge Goff fan. But he's got serious limitations outdoors. And if it's freezing cold and he's got the two gloves, none of us are going to believe in him. So I do believe, and I think the Lions are going to be one and done here come the playoffs. And the team that's trending a little bit, just because at home, if they can win the division, they control it. They still play the Bears twice. That defense is fantastic. And listen, the stats on J.J. McCarthy, I saw something that I put in our group chat that he was as bad. Basically, the only guy worse through a certain amount of games was Jamarcus Russell. Where did I put it? I won't even be able to find it, but it was essentially, here it is. J.J. McCarthy now ranks 851st out of 852 in expected in EPA per dropback among qualified passers since 2000. So basically the internet era. The only player below McCarthy is a man named Jamarcus Russell. But oh wait, it gets worse. When eliminating dropbacks with quick pressures under 2.5 seconds, J.J. McCarthy's performance against the Packers ranked 344th of 346 quarterback performances this year in EPA per dropback. When he dropped backs today, and really in the entire season, it is stunning when something good happens. And obviously the Packers are an elite defense. They were flying around. It was my favorite bet on the board, J.J. McCarthy going into Lambeau. I don't know what that number would have had to be to put some money on the Vikings, but for me, probably would have had to have been at minimum 15-plus points. And that game went about as I expected. J.J. McCarthy looks atrocious. And the Packers defense, listen, they're really good. And if they are able to get home games at Lambeau, they're going to be extremely tough. Because we know how naturally, like a lot of their games, if it's 10 degrees in the middle of January and you can't feel your hands, you can't feel your feet, it's hard to sling it around. So naturally, sometimes in those moments, I remember when the Niners went in there a couple years ago against Rodgers, it was awful weather. There aren't going to be many points to be scored. So you have a huge advantage if you have an elite defense. And historically, the Packers, especially many years with Rodgers, didn't have a good defense. Well, now they got a dominant defense with an awesome pass rush. So if I'm the Packers, like, listen, our offense is going to be a little hit or miss. But if we can get home games at Lambeau, we are going to be tough to beat. So clearly got to win the division. And who knows with Philly, right? You're going to start rooting for the Bears. You want the Bears to beat the Eagles, and then you beat the Bears. And speaking of the Bears, it's been pretty cool if you're a Bears fan because of how shitty you have been. It'd be like if next year the New York Giants are 8-3 or 8-4. It's like, well, you've played nobody. You'd be like, I don't care. Have you watched us play for the last decade? We are apologizing to nobody. And I mentioned this to Coward. Once he got sacked by T.J. Watt in the play in the end zone where the Pittsburgh fell on it and the Steelers went up 14-7, I could kind of see them implode in this game. And not only did they not implode, I thought Caleb showed a lot of mental fortitude. I thought he showed a lot of mental toughness. And I thought he played the best second half he has all season. Given how it kind of started, how it could have got away from him, and he was getting rid of the ball fast. He makes explosive plays. Obviously, as a scrambler, he's excellent. And the other thing was, for the first time in a while, and the Bears are one of the better rushing attacks in the NFL. I think technically they're number 2. I don't know what they are after today. They were not running the ball well at all. So a lot of pressure. And listen, their defense isn't any good. So the pressure was on Caleb, and he came through. Like comparing Caleb Williams and J.J. McCarthy. Caleb Williams like Joe Montana or Tom Brady compared to J.J. McCarthy. Like there is no arguing that if you're a Vikings fan, like this guy stinks. And it doesn't bring me joy. I'm not rooting against him. But you can't wear that war paint. You can't look like a Viking going out to battle and then play like that. If you're going to wear that war paint, you got to be good at football. It works in college if you're on the number 1 team in the country. It does not work in the pros if you're throwing 2 or 3 interceptions a game. So props to Caleb. And luckily for if you're a Bears fan, the Vikings are in absolute shambles. And the Lions are kind of leaking oil as well. I've said this for a while. The Steelers are in full implosion mode. They're just not that good. And if it's not for TJ Watt making some incredible play, they're just not very good. Their offense, I mean, Mason Rudolph was dinking and dunking my eyes to death today. It's like, can you push the ball down the field? And then he would try, and it wasn't even close. And JJ Watt, who has a fantastic head of hair, as a bald man who is pretty good judge of other people's lettuce. JJ Watt, I don't know if he's a 10 out of 10. That'd be like Brad Pitt, but he's like a 9. Just a remarkable head of lettuce on that man's head. But his brother and that team is going to circle the drain. Now, the Ravens are not very good either. Lamar Jackson looks like he's like 70% right now. He's clearly banged up, doesn't quite have the same juice. They were just kind of playing with their food today against the Jets. They still won the game. Henry had a couple touchdowns, but they look kind of like a one-and-done team as well. Obviously, the Bengals stink, and the Browns have 3 wins, but at least they're somewhat interesting because they got Myles Garrett and now Shedeur, but they're not any good as a team either. So the AFC North went from, was it a couple years ago, we're like, that's the best division in football, to now being like, that division stinks. So I'd be stunned. It's a 1 playoff bid division. Whoever wins the division will be the 4 seed. And I think depending on who they play, more than likely they are a one-and-done team. Couple things now, Monday Night Football. One story that went pretty viral over the weekend, this Brandon Aiyuk situation. And I read Mike Silver and Diana's article. I watched Kyle Shanahan's press conference. I saw Rap Sheet and Garofolo and some of those guys on NFL Network chime in. And I got to be honest, as we head to Monday Night Football and I follow this team as close, if not closer, than any other team in the league, I'm really confused. I do not quite understand what's going on. Because the story broke that Aiyuk is going to give up $25 million and not even fight it. I went, you cannot do that. As a human being, unless you're like Bezos, super, super rich, no one ever just willingly gives up $25 million. And you'd be like, John, what if something egregious happens and he doesn't want it to get out? Well, Kyle Shanahan mentioned yesterday this situation all started in July. Well, training camp kind of starts in July. What's the worst thing that could happen? He doesn't show up day 1 in July? That doesn't get $25 million voided. There are still more holes in this story than there are answers. I do not quite understand what is happening. And we don't have enough details because it does not make sense. It does not pass the sniff test. Especially when Kyle Shanahan goes, yeah, I take him back. If he's healthy, he'll play. By no means is it over. Now, maybe he's saying that because some team lawyers tell him to say that. But then Garofolo and Rap Sheet are saying, like, yeah, it's not out of the realm possibility that he still plays this season for the 49ers. I'm like, what? What the fuck are we talking about? This is a story that is typically made for those type teams that win like 2 or 3 games. Underrated part about the 49ers in the Shanahan era, they've won a lot of games, but they've had some weird stuff going on. Now, clearly this situation, they regretted this contract, I feel like the moment the ink dried the day he signed it. If they could have a do-over over any contract or any situation, probably be Trey Lance because they want the first rounders back. But in terms of a veteran player that they re-signed, it would be this. Because this has just been a disastrous situation. Honestly, pretty embarrassing for everyone involved. That you're voiding guarantees, and clearly something weird enough happened that just the guy is not going to fight it. John Lynch's agent is also Brandon Aiyuk's agent. I just know this. There are things that do not add up. They do not pass the smell test. That is this situation. I'm still waiting for more shoes to drop before I just crush or take a position, because even Kyle said, never had this happen. Well, what happened? What did he do? Not show up? Not show up gets $25 million voided? In what fucking world? That's why you have a players union. And then he's like, no, just don't even fight it. What agent and what union representative allows that to happen? Most times in situations, it could be like 300 grand. It could be like an $800,000 bonus, and your agent, the union, would fight for it. Let alone $25 million. It just honestly, I'm at a loss. I felt more confused. Like I felt like reading that article. I'm like, this is weird. And then I watched Kyle talk, and he's like, "Oh, this happened in July. Happened in July? Not enough could happen in July to make this happen." And then I started thinking, like, is Kyle trying to be careful about saying something that he'll regret? And then obviously people chimed in today saying that he could come back. I'm like, what? I found myself more confused at the end of the weekend than I did at the beginning when I first read the article. But just a classic situation of what a disaster. I think the 49ers, if they are able to truly void this money, they got pretty lucky to get out of this situation because they do not want any part of the Brandon Aiyuk business. Now, speaking Monday Night Football, think about it. The Rams, the Eagles, the Lions, the Packers, the Bears. I mean, this is the playoffs. The 49ers and the Panthers. This is a pseudo playoff game as well. Like, there is a lot on the line in this game. The one thing I will say, because I think a lot of people, myself included, right now the line's 7.5. I do think taking the Panthers plus 7.5 is the right pick. Two things, though, make me a little nervous if I'm taking that bet. One, from the 49ers perspective, they're a bright lights team. Kyle Shanahan has coached a lot of these Monday and Sunday night games. Last time I checked, he's won a lot of them. Think about this year. Sunday night, when he had a bunch of injuries against the Atlanta Falcons, dominated them. Thursday night with Mac Jones against the LA Rams, what happened there? Won it in overtime. Now you're playing the Panthers. Bryce Young's never played a big game in the pros. He just hasn't. Now, I do give him credit. He's shown some mental toughness. He's hung in there. Clearly, Ted McMillan looks like an excellent draft pick. But what have the Panthers been in this environment? Now, if you're going to go into this environment, it's kind of like Shedeur. Listen, making your first start, a lot of pressure. Even he admitted, felt like everyone's looking at me. People are rooting for me to fail. It's much easier to go up against the Raiders than like the Packers. So it's much easier if you're the 49ers to play a team with just a lot of unknowns than the Rams or Seattle in this spot. But I just have a hard time seeing the Panthers winning on Monday Night Football at Levi Stadium. I think the 49ers offense, Kittle, McCaffrey, Pearsall's back now, Juwan Jennings. Purdy obviously was really good against the Arizona a week ago. I think they're scoring 30 plus. And to me, the question is, obviously the Niners defense, beside like Lenore, is a bunch of guys you've never heard of. It's a lot of random players. And no matter how good your defensive coordinator is, in the highest levels of college and the highest, obviously, the NFL, you got to have some Jimmies and Joes to go with the X's and O's on defense. I can scheme guys open on offense. Great offensive coordinators have made random guys look good on offense. It's hard to make random guys look good playing defensive end. You can either bend the edge, have a bull rush, overwhelm a guard, or you can't. You can either make an open field tackle or you can't. And that's the question mark with the 49ers. Do they have the Jimmies and the Joes that at least can make a couple stops? Now, you're playing a quarterback that Monday Night Football, a lot of hype, like this Bucs in shambles. You're in position to win the division. I mean, if Carolina wins this game, I have a hard time, especially depending on what Baker's injury is. They're going to be division champs more than likely, as crazy as that sounds. They lose this game, who knows? And I have a hard time closing my eyes and just seeing Bryce Young dominate on Monday Night Football. Maybe I'm wrong. He obviously was good last week against Atlanta. Ted McMillan's been a stud. Even Leggett started showing a little bit. Dwaddle's good. They got some good offensive pieces. They got a good offensive line when healthy. Dave Canales has clearly been pretty solid. Like, he's a good offensive coordinator. I know he's the head coach, but he calls the plays. But I like the 49ers to win. I like Carolina to cover, so I'm taking Carolina plus 7.5. I like Ricky Pearsall to score a touchdown. I like George Kittle to score a touchdown, and I like Ted McMillan to score a touchdown. That plays over 20 to 1. So I put that little parlay together on Hard Rock Bet. So I do think 7.5 with the 49ers defense, especially with a backdoor cover. Like the 49ers to win outright, but that's a lot of points for a defense that's rolling out a practice squad roster. Have a great night. See you later.